Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow toast strudels. This is your host with the most, A.K.A. also known as Nelson. And real quick, of course, I gotta do my intro. And coupled with my intro, I also gotta do my disclaimer. First part of the disclaimer is, please y'all stay hydrated. This is water, just so y'all know that. Second part to my disclaimer, I always let people know is that, typically speaking, these videos are very long-winded if you want to go there. So typically speaking, I try to get in the first 5 minutes I possibly can to give you the overall idea or concept I'm trying to go over. And then past that, that's usually why I go more in depth or kind of veer into different places. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, my total strolls, I'm kind of y'all. Let's get into this one. Now this one I was thinking about for a while. And in fact, I gotta give a special shout out to the Wander podcast on YouTube, which you can by all means please go check them out. In fact, I will link a particular episode of theirs that sparked this idea at the back of my head in the comment section down below, so y'all can go please check them out. Show your support for those gentlemen, those Galaxy Brain gentlemen. Definitely enjoy them. And just so you guys know that this was a very interesting concept. I think, generally speaking, like when you really sit back and you think about it, it's something that I think most of the time it makes sense, but then at the same time, I can understand why it's a very odd discussion to have. And of course, what I'm discussing about, and again, by all means, please to have more further detail as to the idea of this, please again check out their episode. But anyhow, I was re-listening to one of the previous episodes, and they brought up a very interesting concept about how it's very odd that water of all substances on this planet, water being what makes up, I want to say over 50%. I want to say, isn't it about 80 something percent? By all means, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. But I want to say around 80 to over 80% of the Earth's surface covers the Earth's surface. It is very interesting that of all the resources, which is essential to human life, not human life, excuse me, but just life in general, is water. And how interesting it is that, or how infuriating it can be that we pay for water. Of all the things on this earth that we pay for, is water really the essential building block of life itself? H2O? Like, come on now. In fact, you know, it's ironic is that as I'm drinking my water, right, got the ice cubes in it. The thing is, the water that's in here came from my refrigerator, which obviously is filtered from the piping. Not the piping, but you know what I'm trying to say, the source of water that comes to the house. And so the thing is this, obviously you have to pay your utilities, and water being one of them. And this is something interesting I was thinking about today, because where I do agree that if you sit back and you think about it, I think the distribution of water, you can make the argument that that should be a service that is to be paid for. But then the purchase of water in itself is a bit of a slippery slope, because I want to look at it in both ways. Because on one hand, me personally, I do agree. Of all the material on this earth that we utilize on a day-to-day basis, it is ridiculous that you have to pay for something that's literally right there for you to have. In fact, funny enough, y'all, right now as I'm speaking to you, it's raining outside. So literally, if I wanted to, I could get like a, say, a container or like a few buckets and just let it out there, just fill up with water, and I don't have to pay for it, right? But then I think it's this, because that's the other side of the coin. I do take consideration why it's reasonable to an extent why you would want to pay, or let's say you want to say enlist the service of those who can clean the water. Because that's the thing. If you look at, I can't recall where this particular statistic is from, but I want to say that majority of the water on Earth is salt water. And the thing is, you don't want to drink salt water, because essentially you'd be dehydrating yourself. because of salt, the salt in it. And the thing is, filtering that is a process that's by all means not cheap, and especially if you want to take in consideration the scale in which you're trying to purify that water, or you want to filtrate it so that instead of it being salt water, it becomes fresh water. In fact, I guess the one thing that's a little odd in terms of, not odd, excuse me, y'all, but let's say when you think of just nature, like something interesting I found out I ain't gonna say years, but I think a few months ago, I didn't realize this, but I remember watching a video about the Arctic, the ice caps melting down. And what I found out is that since salt water is technically heavier than fresh water, the fresh water, when it's like start to freeze, or like say if that water is, at a lower temperature, it actually freezes more so the fresh water as it's sitting on top of the salt water, which I didn't know about. I was like, oh shit, that's very intriguing. So it makes sense that as, obviously, global warming, whatever you want to call it, is happening, obviously the ice capsules are going to start to melt down, obviously raising the water level. But here's the thing, if that's the case, then you got to imagine all the fresh water that's technically being exposed out there into the world, but it's not being utilized in that case. And another thing I thought was very interesting to me about the concept too is this. Yes, let's say if you were in a town or a village that had a water well, obviously it is possible that, something can happen to where maybe that might be closed off to you for whatever reason, earthquake, natural disaster, or someone might even, do something to it. That is possible. So obviously, yes, do you want to have different or as many options accessible to you to purchase or have some form of access to clean water? Yes. But at the same time, you also have to take consideration, as far as I'm concerned, who is putting what into these bottles. Because just so you guys know, I can't recall specifically which brand it is, but there's a particular brand of, I guess you could say, distributors of water, like in the water bottles, that technically they put in a certain, I think I'll say it's specifically a chemical, apart from, the plastic, but in the water that makes it like little bits of salt in it, or some other kind of substance that makes you want to drink more when you're drinking it. You got to think about this. That is released to the public with the intention of you wanting to purchase more water in the realm of a business. Now, don't get it twisted. I do understand, of course, yes, because they posed a question, or one of them had posed a question, to give them a legit reason why we should pay for water. And my thing is, I did answer the question, and this is something I want to kind of utilize in this particular video, is that yes, from an economic standpoint, that's probably the most valid reason why we do it in the first place. Because it's like this. At the end of the day, and this is something I'm going to touch on later on in the day, if I remember correctly, if I recall it in my head. But this is what I want to leave with y'all, is that at the end of the day, and I'm not going to say this has been all the time, but I think recently in the last few 100 years or so, let's say at least the last 100 years, I think at some point in time, the people, or the powers that be, let me say that, the powers that be recognize that from an economic standpoint, it is more profitable both for them and for those who are employed by them to make temporary solutions versus more long-term solutions. For example, I'm gonna use this one, like cancer. Perfect example. Because if you ask people, hey, would you like to donate to this particular charity that goes into the research of cancer, then the thing is, some people are going to say, no, thank you. And you might ask the question, well, why so? And sometimes, or most of the time, I think, generally speaking, you get the answer of, or you might get the reply of, well, here's the thing. It's been several years since we've given them all that money, yet you're telling me they still haven't found a cure to this particular cancer? And because we're not saying, like when I say cancer, I'm not talking about overall cancer as a whole, because there are variants of cancers around the world. But it's like saying, if we're looking at one specific cancer, let's say breast cancer, for example. If you look at breast cancer, you would think by this time around, with all the marathons, with all the events, all the advertisement that we do for breast cancer awareness, you would think at this point in time they would have made some stride in, again, a cure, not a pill, not a controlled substance, not a vaccine, not a cure. But all this time, we have not heard of a cure. Now, I'm not saying they're not still working on something along that lines to the general public's knowledge, because that's the important part, is how do we know they have a cure? How do we know how much progress they really have made? How much do we really know? Again, that's released to the general public. Excuse me, to the general public. That's a genuine question to ask. And again, for me, when I ask that question, give me a second. For me, y'all, when I ask that question, I don't ask it out of fear. I don't ask it out of ignorance. I ask it in genuine curiosity. Because here's the thing. It wouldn't shock me that they would go the route of temporarily, temporarily hindering a particular disease or a particular cancer. In fact, another great example that just popped out on the top of my head, and I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all seen the advertisement for, I can't recall the name of this particular drug necessarily, but it's supposed to help with those with HIV. And my thing is, or its detection, so that it's virtually unspreadable, virtually, essentially. But then it's like you have to keep consuming it. It's not a one done thing. And my thing is this, and that don't get twisted, for anyone who's has HIV, or you have a partner who's HIV, or you have a family member who is HIV positive, right? By all means, yes. Would I encourage them to take a look at that particular product and see if they want to utilize it in their day-to-day lives? Absolutely. But at the same time, I would also say this. Again, if you've made strides to where you can hinder it to a point where it's undetectable, then to me, that shows me that you should be this even closer to a cure to get rid of it. Because again, think about, like, say, another example, I'm just going to leave y'all with this, right? I just want y'all to think about this. It's like, say, if you want to compare the pandemic as we have it right now, ever since 2020, I'm probably say you could, 2020, maybe maybe late 2019, if you want to go that far back. I find it interesting that if you look at where we are, granted, take it with a grain of salt, that yes, we're incorporating a pandemic that's all over the world versus, let's say, you look at the Black Plague or the Black Death, all the way back in medieval times. That took, I want to say, if I remember, again, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I remember correctly, 1/3 of Europe's population. And the interesting part about this is, and again, for anyone who's a history buff, by all means, correct me in the comment section down below. I would love to make sure that I got my information straight. But to my understanding, the plague back then, I want to say lasted for a few years. But the thing is, where it began, no one knew what it was. But by the time it ended, no one knew what it was necessarily in terms of where it came from. When I say it came from, even though we know now that it came from the fleas that were affecting the rodents, getting on ships or whatnot. But it's like, we don't know essentially where its original source came from. We don't know how the ticks got into it. We never know to this day. But the point being is this. I'm pretty sure if they had the means to where they could have cured it, I'm pretty sure they will distribute that. But then, let's say they were of the business mindset of, well, we can cure it, but we could also utilize this to a profit. It's not that far-fetched. Because at the end of the day, y'all, and I'm going to leave y'all with this, and I'm going to try to tie this all the way back to the concept of, should we even really need to buy water? On some level, I would say this. Buying water for the sake of buying it, no, I wouldn't say we should have to do that. However, I would say this. Should we make a means to purchase or to at least say give payment to those who are capable of, again, safely not distributing, excuse me, but distilling the water. Make sure it's purified, make sure there's no, funny stuff in it. So that makes sense for us to pay for it in that regards? Yes. But the distribution of that water at the same time is funky. But then again, yes, can you help someone out there who can, put some food on table, put some clothes on their backs, keep a roof over their heads, if there's a position for them to deliver that water? Yes. But like I said, it's a slippery slope. But I would definitely love to hear what you guys think. Because by all means, I'm not the end all be all of, what this is about. So by all means, please, let me know in the comment section what your thoughts, your opinions on the matter. And in fact, just so you guys know, by all means, please, if there's a particular suggestion that you would love to let me know about, that you would love to see covered on this channel, by all means, again, get me on the comment section. Or, again, I remind y'all, in the description box below, I do let you guys know what my Twitter is, okay? And in fact, I'm going to go and tell you what my Twitter is right now. It's at, just for those who don't look at it, it's at Mr. K. KT, I'm gonna start over again real quick. It's at Mr. all uppercase, not uppercase, excuse me. It's Mr. uppercase, then lowercase. I'm fucking this up, y'all. Hold on. I got this time. Okay, it's at Mr. M uppercase, R lowercase, and then the rest is uppercase, KTMIB. 1. All right, I got it that time. But anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, my toes true. I forgot y'all. I'll catch y'all later in the next episode. And yes, I'm still gonna do the live stream for a spoiler cast for Invincible season 1. It will come soon, I promise y'all. But anyhow, I'll catch y'all later. Peace and love y'all. Bye.